Hallelujah, hallelujah,
Hallelujah, hallelujah.
I give you a new commandment, love one another, just as I have loved you, says the Lord.
Hallelujah, hallelujah.
The Lord be with you.
And with your
Reading from
spirit,
the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
glory to you, O Lord.
There was a lawyer who, to disconcert Jesus, stood up and said to him, Master, what must I do to inherit eternal life? He said to him, What is written in the law? What do you read there? He replied, You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. You have answered right, said Jesus. Do this, and life is yours. But the man was anxious to justify himself and said to Jesus, And who is my neighbor? Jesus replied, A man was once on his way down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of brigands. They took all he had, beat him, and then made off, leaving him half dead. Now a priest happened to be travelling down the same road, but when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. In the same way, a Levite came to the place. He saw him and passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan traveller who came upon him was moved with compassion when he saw him. He went up and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. He then lifted him up onto his own mount, carried him to the inn, and looked after him. Next day he took out 2 denarii and handed them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and on my way back I will make good any extra expense you have. Which of these 3 do you think moved himself a neighbor to the man who fell into the brigand's hands? The one who took pity on him, he replied. Jesus said to him, Go and do the same yourself. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
This Gospel falls well on the memorial of a new Irish beatus, Columba Marmion, who was put on the altar around the year of the millennium along with others, but he is a proud member of the Irish people. We are glad to have him, and he also is an heirloom not only for Ireland but for the whole Christian Church, insofar as he crystallizes in his teaching the best of monastic spirituality. His famous trilogy of works is still given as staple diet, quite often in formation, for it brings the monk back to the essence, the indwelling, the life of perpetual worship and praise, the Trinity honoured with all the faculties, the specificity of Benedictine spirituality, which also extends to any contemplative life, for though the means might differ slightly from one house to the other, the essence is the same, and this saint calls us to the essence. He was from the Dublin area himself, and he was a natural English speaker from one side of the family especially, and he was ordained, having been formed in Clonleaf College to the Diocese of Dublin, the Archdiocese, and functioned there for a short while, but he actually knew that the Lord was calling him to a more interior life and found his way to the monastic family of St. Benedict. Eventually at Marizu in Belgium he became abbot, but he had to move around a little because of the times, and for about 3 years he was back in Ireland in a house of refuge, which I actually know. It's in the present manor house of Enniscorthy. It's quite a bit south of Dublin. And some years ago I was asked to celebrate Holy Mass there in the old rite, so I sang it, and it was quite moving because the choir stalls and the altar are still in the chapel that he was using for 3 years unchanged. They are of good, solid woodwork, and one did feel a continuity with the past. It was a similar feeling that I had in another church and chapel in Dublin itself around about the same period, because I was able to celebrate Holy Mass with, I believe, the chalice of, by now, Saint John Henry Newman himself, possibly also his vestments, in the church that he had built in Dublin, the University Church, in the possible hope of having eventually an oratory in Dublin. That bit never happened. But the church is a bit of Italy in the middle of Dublin, and that was a very moving experience as well. And one sees there precisely that one is outside both time and geography, and one is hidden in a hidden cloud of witnesses, a great mystical body, the communion of saints. And these are our brethren who call us on to do what they did with the same means. With regard to the means, they are precisely the way to the end, and the end is given in this gospel. And indeed, the way in which all the faculties are engaged in that quest, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and indeed with all your mind in this version, is a challenge, because that's precisely what the monastic life does. All is consecrated. All the energies are challenged and channeled in one direction. There is no leakage whatsoever. The cursus rectus ad Deum, direct course unto God. And that is actually hugely liberating. In the strict monastic life, which of course he would have known, the all creates on earth a counterpart of the angelic life of heaven, because one is all the time chanting in solemn mode what the angels are chanting invisibly with us and invisibly ahead of us on that same invisible stage of glory, which we are reproducing in our own way on earth. And Columba Marmion does comment the way in which on the Mass of the Sunday around the pontiff, the abbot, there is very much an atmosphere which is a counterpart of the angelic praise of heaven. It's something glorious. And I remember actually when growing up precisely in that atmosphere, because my parish was run by Benedictines, 6 or 7 of them, when I was sent up to Ampleforth for Holy Week, I remember the comment of my spiritual father, Dom Lawrence Bevernow, just to see a bit of Benedictine splendour. And so it was. A massive community. There were about 120 in the community, and it was Dom Basil Hume, future, of course, Archbishop and Cardinal, who was pontificating, and all the stops were pulled out. The Easter Vigil lasted about 3 hours, and it was the real thing. Nothing was spared, and it indicated actually 2 things. What man is capable of for the glory of God, and also where we've come from. For these monks, in our case, had come with an unbroken line from the pre-Reformation period, hence the English habit with the elephant ears. what happened was they went into exile, but there was one thin line. It was through Dom Sigebert Buckley, which carried on. He was a monk of Westminster and handed on the succession rights to two novices. So it went on in exile at Dieu-Loire and came back to Ampleforth. But it was the same chant, and one did feel the power of the centuries. Whatever one says about the monastic life, it is something which links us to our brethren who are safe and sound on the other side. I remember actually at La Trappe, when we lost one of the lay brothers, it was Frère Marie, Don Lucien, the prior at the time, mentioned in chapter, Il est allé à la grande trappe. He has gone to the great trappe, that is the brethren on the other side, because the family also did not have a break. That went on from 1142 onwards. The Cistercian family always carried on there, even in exile. It was a huge, invisible family, a great cloud of witnesses. And it links us also to the East. One time we had an Eastern monk who came to talk to us at La Trappe, and he felt it. He did say, when talking to us in chapter, ce qui est de plus pur, what is purest in the Western tradition, because the absolute, l'absolu de La Trappe was something that linked us to the Desert Fathers. And with regard to the Desert Fathers, an interesting author of their own, well, he's English, but he writes well on their behalf, Archimandrite Anthony Bloom, has an interesting commentary on this gospel, indicating that this pouring on of oil and wine is something that happens in the contemplative life. And he pulls out one unexpected bit of commentary in picking out the word elion. This olive oil that the Lord places is to be found in what they have all the time, the Jesus prayer, when one is asking for mercy. Eleison is repeated day and night, and also in the liturgy, eleison in Mass. And the nature of the contact between heaven and earth is mercy. God, the Son of God on one side, the poor sinner on the other, and the bridge is this healing of wounds. Mercy, mercy, mercy. Singed by rays felt during the Missa Cantata at Blessed Columba's altar. What is a place, a spot upon the globe that onward turns and pauses for no man? What is it yet to wear an ancient robe and stand upon a step that stepping can from buried time yet hear? What is a stone hewn well to hold high force, hid workings strange? What is, I say, a place to stand alone upon a land once known, 'neath the old rays' range? 'Tis to be on a moving aeon still, unshoved by hurry's haste. 'Tis to lean on a second as it comes. 'Tis to let thrill old tingles that once passed. For here's redone a work that once worked well, and works again with ancient mastery. We thought too plain. It was the old Tridentine right, unchanged and unhurried. Ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus Elius, ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus Elius, ubi caritas